So good morning and welcome to the 14th edition of Best Practices Meet. And we know that we do this as a theme-based kind of event in cybersecurity. Last 6-7 years of time, so we had been picking up various interesting themes. One of that was platform security, platformation security that we talked about. We talked about intelligence security. We talked about various different themes about cybersecurity. Now this year, because we all know that last uh, 5-6 years of time basically. So where it was security technology as such or security overall profession as such, what we used to focus our attention largely, and all of us come from, most of us come from that background, is assessment and assurance of security basically. And most of the attention of security technology was also to help assessor, help auditors basically, right? But that change, that focus has changed in last 6-7 years of time especially, which is focused from assessment and testing to management of the real-time challenges basically, right? So we had been millions of the situation that probably handling in the organization ecosystem, most of them will go well, but sometimes that one situation which will create a compromise or which will probably yield the largest implication is very difficult to manage unless we have architecture, technology in place and operations for that in place basically. And that's what the entire security operation ecosystem has evolved, and a lot of technology capability had been. Any update from them? Okay, that's okay. That's okay. So Bangalore traffic. So the Palo Alto team will take its own time, but that gives us a good opportunity for us to really converse on the topic that we thought about for entire BPM and for this particular as well. So what I was trying to say is the real-time management of a security, real-time management of the issues and problems and threats had become quite significant, and that's what we had seen quite significant investment as coming into cybersecurity space. There are 1,000 different types of the technology, security technology as of now. So there is one senior person from one of the IT services company. Both of us maintain the type of technology that are emerging in cybersecurity space. Almost 1,000 different types of technology and thousands of startups which are coming to solve a particular use case basically, right? And those use cases are now becoming relevant for us, for the larger community as well as for the specific sector or specific operations as well basically. And when it is happening like that, so we are seeing so many different use cases of security that needs to be solved, and that's why we have seen a lot of cybersecurity startup came in the picture in last so many years. And last year especially was a very significant year, right? 31 cybersecurity company became a unicorn last year. In 1 year of time, 31 companies became unicorn basically, right? And the kind of investment that is coming in cybersecurity space, there's one company which and again, this was the India origin people who set up this company in SIM and so on. They have quite significant operation here in Bangalore. They got only $1 billion as investment. Look at the valuation basically they must have got for that investment basically. So quite significant investments are coming in cybersecurity space, and that are leading to quite an interesting ecosystem of innovation that we are seeing as of now in a cybersecurity space. While that is happening, and innovation is important, the specific use case is important, specific problem statement is very important, and people are finding ways to do that. And some technology ecosystem, especially user ecosystem, have been looking, trying to take that risk as well. I started doing a India-US CISO forum basically. The CISOs there in US basically, I had seen most of them talking about how they contributed to development of new technology. They're willing to take a risk. They're willing to take a particular chance with a particular startup to build a solution for a particular use case basically. And they have been contributors, the CISO community had been contributor to development technology. Not only that, they go ahead and invest in technology as well. There are a lot of CISO forums there, a lot of CISO specific investment ecosystem there. They come and invest in cybersecurity companies basically. Their ecosystem allows doing that. In our case, probably conflict of interest will become a very important area of discussion, but a lot of CISOs have been investing there. And the culture, there is a risk-taking culture for CISO, because we know that we always talk about needle in haystack basically, and that's what the cybersecurity has come. So millions of operating scenarios will go well. There will be one situation, the things will probably collapse or probably compromise the security basically. So finding that one thing is now a matter of lot of those capabilities, lot of those possibilities, lot of those data basically. And the things are, there are lot of devices, lot of systems, lot of different way of infrastructure that is being used basically, that is throwing lot of data. Out of that data, finding a particular pattern and finding a particular issue is a matter of technology, right? The people say that the people process technology is very important for cybersecurity. I'm probably making some controversial statement here. Now, technology part is taking care of a lot of process and people part as well. If you look at the UBA for that matter, if you look at a lot of the administrative part of the security, security has 4 different type of technology, right? One is the enforcing technology, other is the administration technology, the third part is the assessment and assurance kind of a technology, and last part is which is helping you to operationalize or managing the operations of security basically. So the administrative part is largely the people specific problem basically, and many of that is now taken care of a technology basically. And a lot of those technology ecosystem has been, a lot of those automation, orchestration that we talk about, and we had been listing these words quite significantly and concept quite significantly. So the entire ecosystem, and that's what the tremendous amount of the startups, number of startups are coming in the cybersecurity space, and quite a good investments are also coming in cybersecurity space. Cybersecurity had remained as one of the important hot investment area for a lot of investors in India and other parts of the globe, especially in the US basically. And we are seeing that momentum happening in India as well. So I run a National Center of Excellence for Cybersecurity Technology and Product Entrepreneurship in Delhi, and this is a national effort. We are also trying to look at what we can do across the country. So where in just last 2 years since we started in early 2020, we are almost 75 startups which we have incubated and accelerated until now basically. And there are, every month I am coming across a handful of startups basically which coming to solve this particular problem. So just recent one, there is a group of lawyers basically, they came to me with the idea that in privacy specifically area, they're saying that we can even look at the code, and based on the code we can say whether the consent or the privacy policy which has been devised by the organization is right in place by looking at the code, and they are automating, understanding, scanning the code and trying to find whether this particular privacy policy matches to what they are doing at the ground level basically. Or for example, GDPR talks about the records of processing. They are saying with this kind of analysis that we are doing, we could able to really make a very good maintained record of the processes that is done on data basically. So for a lot of those use cases, technology is now coming as a very important way or instrument to solve the problem basically, or find a new use case and look at the solving that problem technological way. Yes, we need definitely skill set, we need operational effort for the security, but that is what this security, especially in last 2 years, especially after pandemic, we are seeing all of the startup, especially the established startup, which tells us last 2 years they have been grown almost 3 times, 4 times kind of a volume and value as well actually. So that is the ecosystem we are seeing, but while that is being evolved that way, we are seeing a lot of those solutions needs to be managed, right? A lot of those capability needs to be managed. You have to integrate that together, you have to converge that together, you have to build a very enterprise security operation out of it basically. So then another side, those who are buying security, which are managing security, they are also finding it difficult to manage all those capability. They're finding it difficult to bring that all together. They're finding it difficult to orchestrate that all together for generating that response that is required for a particular threat or particular ecosystem basically. And that's why the consolidation as a key thing which has been discussed in last 1 year of time. We need to consolidate security, we need to manage it better, we need to bring this together, we need to integrate it better, we need to converge it better basically. And that's what this theme of today's this year's best practice meet is the consolidation of security. And when we look at that, we look at the from the organization perspective, what organization is trying to do to consolidate security, technological side. So there is always a 2-3 way different way the security consolidation or any such kind of trend which is evolving can be seen. One is from the user side basically today, right? Those who are buying and managing and governing security. There is another one which is the development side of security, those who are developing solutions, developing idea, developing product. So that is one way of looking at it. And the third way is very important for us as an Indian geography is those who are serving, those who are providing services on top of the technology as well. So these 3 elements that we'll be covering as a part of these interactions today. So we will be dwelling on different areas of our security, try to look at how exactly it is evolving. We had covered some part of that yesterday as well as a part of the virtual conference. So these three things that we'll be covering, and at the same time we'll try to also try to reflect on what we have seen happening in security for last 2 years of time. In some areas that we'll also go into some of the sectors as well. Like we are trying to look at health sector, we are trying to look at the insurance sector yesterday. So we will also look at how exactly the different sectors are responding to that. So this is what we will cover in this particular session. We will definitely cover on how the Secops, security operations, had been discussed until now and the context of that, especially through SIM, SOAR kind of a capability we thought about, but then what exactly is changing from now basically we'll be discussing. But before we go for that, anything that you would like to comment on the agenda or anything that you have seen last 2 years in cybersecurity happening, and probably we can reflect on that to build some context for today's interaction basically. I'd like any of you basically have any comment, any suggestion, or any areas that you would like to dwell on. So please feel free to ask that question. So in India, last 2 had been very eventful from the cybersecurity perspective. We are talking about national cybersecurity strategy, which is in making for last 2 years. We know that the data protection regulation, which we had been trying to have that law for last 5 years, and again the country has withdrawn that and probably again regrouping together to build a very comprehensive law for the future. There's the IT Act, which is also in making now, so new cyber law is also in making basically. At a national level, cybersecurity as an architecture now evolved much better way, because we have now institutions like NCIPC, CERT, NCCC, then NCSC basically as a coordinator for cybersecurity. So any of those areas that basically you have any doubt, any question, any suggestion, please feel free to express so that we can use that as a setting context for today. Yeah. Yeah, so CERT is certainly an important part. CERT guidelines on this reporting of incident, which has steered a lot of those kind of discussion as well as concern, and some organizations are really trying to grapple what it means to us and what exactly it will look at. Some are looking that as an opportunity as well. We'll definitely try to dwell on that. Yeah, cyber insurance is definitely another thing.
So my question is related to, if we are going for consolidation, are we also looking into standardization? So I know that some product vulnerability or policy might be high, and for some other product it will be critical. So are we also looking into standardization?
Yeah, so this is a very important part. So what do you mean by consolidation? So consolidation means putting things together, and things could go together if there are some standardization which happens. Until now, we had looked at more administrative standards, right? So managerial standard like ISMS basically, but the technology level standard ecosystem is very important, because that's why things can talk to each other basically. And there are even standardization like, for example, YARA rules or something like ticks and taxes standards which has come basically. So which is helping you at a very technical level, how standardization can help you to talk to each other, get those information together and process that as well. So there is a bottom-up technology way of looking at the standard, and also top-down way of looking at the standard from the managerial and governance perspective as well. So that is definitely a very important part. Any other point, please? Can somebody? Yeah. 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 For all the people, right? So yeah.
We have a problem of see, the MII complaints is very strictly monitored by the government and by our Ministry of Power. So we are not allowed to buy, especially in cyber security, we can't buy anything which is not having minimum of 60% Indian content. So due to this, we are unable to add many things which we would like to add to tighten our network or this thing. So is there any national level initiative, either by the government or by the association of the people who are making, presently they may be taking it from their collaborators and then supplying it. So is there a concerted effort or consolidated effort to bring the technology and make it in India and comply with that 60% so that companies like us, government companies, public sectors, banks, we can comply with the Make in India thing and improve our security posture?
For all other people to understand the context of what.
I am Ganesh.
Yeah, Ganesh. So for the government organization and for public sector organization, so there is a preferential market access policy. That's one, and there are some sectoral policies as well. And power sector, Minister of Power came up with the cybersecurity requirements. So there's a CAC guideline for cybersecurity, Minister of Power last year, 2020-21, which puts a lot of those kind of obligations on the power sector organization for one is the improving and beefing of cybersecurity, and other is a lot of those limitations in terms of the devices and equipments going into the network due to the supply chain security issues that we talk about, right? So, and I'm aware because a lot of DSCI members are now power sector organization basically. So, in this particular case, this preferential market access policy is certainly for some organizations creating problem, but that is also helping a lot of Indian startups in cybersecurity space. So, I will like to assure you almost 200 plus startups are there in a product side, security product side basically, which are building solutions in different parts of cybersecurity. And now I'm saying a lot of public sector organization, government organization, even defense. So with one of the defense unit, we are also helping to build entire security stack using Indian capability. So now we have capability, cybersecurity capability exists in the country, so which can be leveraged for this particular purpose. There are some issues with respect to the procurement as well, but some of these PMA guidelines can also help you to work with startups in cybersecurity space basically. So we can discuss on that particular part what exactly is happening. But the cybersecurity technology ecosystem in the country, we had been providing services domestically and plus global market as well. We had almost 200 plus thousand people working in the cybersecurity space, but now we are almost 200 plus security technology companies in the country, right? There are startups which has been initiated and originated here in India basically. So those startups are now solving some of those crucial critical sector requirement as well. So which can be leveraged for this. There is definitely, in some areas, there is definitely some exemptions that is required, and government is now considering exemption for that as well actually. Exemption needs to be sought, and there is a approval that needs to be sought. So that can also be a way to solve some of these problems basically. But we'll definitely discuss on the kind of startup we have in cybersecurity space. Yeah, it's there.
This is Gurpreet here from IDBI Bank. So coming from banking industry, we have this compliance fatigue. So with all these nodal agencies which you talked about, NCCC, NCIIPC or CERTIN or RBI, so if there is consolidation in security, I think those government agencies also should be consolidated somewhere. The reporting part actually should be singular one way, maybe that also should be considered.
Yeah. Ishan, can you get somebody to move the mic basically? So this is very important, and CERT directive has triggered a lot of this discussion. So once you have the national security machinery, right, and that machinery is rare, right? So there are at a national level, there are almost 4 things, right? So one is the CERT and NCCC, right? And CERT has come up with very significant directive for the storing a log and also reporting within the stipulated time period, and it's very comprehensive, very in detail kind of guidance, and sometimes we all have observations on that, but that's already now a directive and needs to be complied basically. Then there is NCIPC if you are in critical sector. So this is National Critical Information Protection Center. So you need to also comply with those requirements if you are falling into critical sector organization. Then there is a individual ministry, right? So for example, Minister of Power I talked about, which has come up with the requirement. So line ministry coming and probably governing security in their domain basically. So that's the third thing. And fourth is there is a National Cybersecurity Coordinator Office as well. Um, and then if you look at banking side, basically RBI has some requirement of reporting of the requirement basically, and now we will be also bringing some reporting requirement when the data protection regulations will be coming. So in banking organization itself, if there is some compromise, some breach happens, there are almost 6 to 7 reporting requirement basically. And this 6 to 7 reporting requirements really puts a lot of strain on somebody who is managing security basically. If something goes wrong, people should be focusing their attention to solve that problem rather than reporting and probably answering all those questions coming from all of those agencies basically. So this need of a consolidation of a national architecture for cybersecurity, which reduces the burden on somebody who is managing security, is very important critical need, and we had been talking about it. We discussed this in a certain context as well. This need of a consolidation of a compliance requirement that we are putting together, and once the data protection regulations comes in, that will also bring a lot of those kind of requirement from the privacy side as well actually. So there is definitely need of some optimization and consolidation in terms of the way the national security machinery works, and we would like to take this particular agenda to talk and discuss with the government, but challenge is definitely there, but because the different bodies work together, and we hope that once national NCCC comes in picture, which would also, if you are in the critical sector organization, it will also entail like your network can be directly connected to their network basically, at least some part of the network basically. So the reporting could be automatic for them rather than you taking specific effort to report actually. So some efforts are definitely there architecturally, technical architecturally, some efforts are definitely being there, but more needs to be done in this area actually. So this insurance is an interesting point basically. So we had heard last 2 years, although insurance is suggested as a critical mean to solve security problem, as one of the key strategy to solve security problem, and many compliance requirements are talking about cyber insurance. There are a lot of policy instrument which is coming to help organization to buy insurance more. There are a lot of those ecosystem support that is coming for the insurance capability building in the country basically. But while insurance was speaking as one of the important cybersecurity strategy, last 2 years, especially after this pandemic and all these things happening between Ukraine and Russia, some insurance companies have started taking a back as well to honor those kind of a claim basically, right? So anybody would like to comment on the insurance basically? Yeah.
See, the whole market of insurance has been dropping in the last 2 years. Reasons obviously known is there have been few global, legal cases where, everybody says if it's a state of, act of war or something, then the insurance, like it's applicable for our personal insurance also, it is not applicable. And many insurance companies have taken the garb of that, saying that it's an act of war. However, some of the courts have come in very strongly and said, and have given decisive, in favor of the customer. So obviously insurance companies are little awry at the moment, and they believe that some of this business has got a lot of uncertainties. And obviously, and as long as the customer doesn't get confidence that tomorrow if I have a incident which could be, which could completely break down my business, is my insurance company going to be, liable and will pay my damages? So somehow this whole industry suddenly in the last 2 years has gone, a backseat.
Yeah, the premiums would be costlier from now on. Insurance premiums will be costlier. There will be more detailed investigation that will be required. A lot of technical examination would happen now on basically, and there are a lot of technical ecosystem also evolve to take care of the insurance specific requirement. Like a lot of those risk quantification, risk prioritization. So all of those technology solutions which are now coming to support the insurance specific requirement, and but it will be not easy the way we had seen 2-3 years back. Basically, it will be definitely quite thorough exercise the insurance companies will be doing. It will also create a lot of opportunities for security professions, because it will be more nuanced and more granular going forward basically. And a lot of technology solutions can serve only the purpose of this risk management and risk quantification, risk prioritization, and a lot of those new stack of technology like AI, ML could really play a very important role here basically. So at the end of the day, giving that number is giving the comfort as well, right? So this comfort is also internal stakeholders in most of the business leaders, the board members, the CEOs want to see where we stand in security. So so the number out of 10, number out of 100 really helps, and it also helps the insurance companies as well. But those things which will determine the number, those parameters will be very significantly nuanced coming future. Quite complex mathematical equation will be used. It will be also, the parameters will be also very sensitive, and so there is a statistical language. Some parameters will be having significant impact on the outcome that you drive. So I was just talking to somebody, just by putting something, means somebody achieved quite significant number there, and they did something small thing to connect to the honeypot network, and because of honeypot the number has significantly come down basically, right? So all of these things would be means risk management perspective, and risk management, I'm not talking about typical sense, I'm talking about those who are using technology to manage the risk basically. A lot of things will be changing in coming future basically, throwing a lot of interesting use cases and ideas also to solve the problem or build the solutions as well. Yeah.
So one more on the Thank you. So, yeah, how do we strike a balance between so many regulations that are, especially in the financial sector, versus the third parties? And my colleague here, Anuj, will probably have more focused questions for you later. But how do we strike a balance between the regulatory asks and managing the third parties? Because with the big giants, it's often difficult to get customizations as per the requirements. So how do we strike a balance there to be compliant on time? So that's
So this question is very important, and this question is important from who is asking this question. If you are a provider of a security, you are asking this question, means you are talking about the same problem that he talked about, is so many regulation, how do I comply with that basically? It's coming from the customer. If you are somebody who is buying the security, right? If you are buying the security, means then there are a lot of third parties that you have to manage, and how do you manage the security obligations and responsibility when things are getting distributed to third parties basically. If you are government, regulatory bodies, the question would be always there, ki how the government make sure that some of those things that is required for security privacy is also get percolated to, or also the third parties also will be responsible for this basically. So when we talk about this question, we talk about these three different angles basically, right? So if I am a service provider, if I am serving so many different clients, and each client has their own obligation, all of those obligations comes onto me, and I have to serve all the auditor compliance requirement coming from all other direction basically, and that is definitely third party security risk assessment and risk management definitely became as a significant big problem in recent past basically. Why it is? Because digitization is so we need to understand from digitization and the way the technology is evolving. Digitization, technology development and transformation is nothing but is opening up yourself to get help up or get leverage from all the capability that are there all across the globe, coming from any part of the globe basically, and your ability to get augment that capability or make use of that capability is very important, and that's what the digitization is. The digitization is unbundle all the transaction processing basically, right? So digitization means what we had seen in terms of telecom, we are seeing that is happening in various different areas where transaction processing business is getting unbundled by so many third party service providers, vendors, product companies, fintechs, lot of those kind of, if you are in health organization, there's health tech basically. A lot of those third party service providers, product companies, new startups, and now cloud capabilities are coming to help you to execute one transaction right from initiation of transaction to even helping you to enrich the transaction, execute transaction, and even managing data coming out of the transaction basically. And we haven't thought about this would happen, right? We'll use Google to initiate the financial transaction basically, right? So that's what the digitization is happening. That's why the entire ecosystem of these third parties is getting very complex, and now we are also talking about API-based economy, where a lot of APIs also we consume, and we also provide that API to other providers as well. In that case, it's very difficult. If I just see from the regulator perspective, I've been following with RBI's regulation on this particular area. How do we make sure that the regulatory obligations those obligation liabilities and the ownership for that basically is distributed to all of those third-party ecosystem that are serving a main controller basically in the typical language of a controller processor kind of language basically. So this remains a very big challenge for somebody like a regulator as well, or policymaker, or for that matter, even law making process as well. And if you really put very stringent requirement for that, then you will be probably stifling a lot of innovation. So all this growth that we are seeing happening in India, especially this entire IT industry basically, is to serve and support a lot of those global requirements basically. If you try to put a lot of those obligations on this way the transaction process is happening, then it will probably inhibit a lot of those controller not to use the third parties for this basically, right? So RBI recently came up with outsourcing guideline, right? Until now outsourcing was happening, but now RBI is trying to structure that. When banks are outsourcing, then these are the requirements, these are the things, these are the elements that needs to be taken care of. And just recently only they have published a draft for this basically, and probably that will be notified as one of the requirement as well actually. So similarly, gradually RBI started putting together liabilities for payment service provider. Then they started putting together requirements for all of those ecosystem partners, some partners, ecosystem partner which is supporting financial transaction processing basically. ATM provider, credit card companies, lot of payment service providers basically, they have now some obligation which regulators have been putting. So if you are buying or you are managing security, so you can make use of some of this regulation. You can leverage this regulation. For example, Ministry of Power, if you are in power industry, then until now there wasn't anything available for you to use to make the third party ecosystem accountable for security. But now the Ministry of Power guidelines you can leverage that, you can take a strength from that to make the third party responsible for security, and because of that regulation, third party itself will make sure that they invest in security basically, right? So one is the regulatory policy and how you make use of that to create a ownership of your third party. That's one important part. If I'm seeing the regulator perspective and from the buyer perspective, buyer organization or user organization needs to be having very good evolved third party security risk management ecosystem in place. That needs to be very thorough third party risk, because now I am hearing even from RBI ecosystem and banking ecosystem is now they are until now talking about only tertiary, secondary services going on cloud. But now there is a call for moving core to cloud. Even core operations, core applications would be needed to go to the cloud basically. The kind of transaction that we are seeing in UPI, 7-8 billion transaction per month, without cloud you will not able to match that scale basically. So in that case, how do you make sure that you have that third party security risk management well evolved third party security risk management ecosystem basically so that's from the buyer and user perspective. From the somebody who is providing these services, for them also the compliance shouldn't be that stringent, right? Otherwise then you will make the life very difficult. A lot of fintech companies are worried about so much stringent regulation coming from financial regulator or from the government. So then most of the bigger players wouldn't like to work with the small companies basically. So if you regulate very stringently, then you would have a lot of difficulties in terms of those innovations happening from the startups and a lot of this ecosystem basically. For them, how you optimize the compliance is also very important part, and third party security risk management, there are a lot of solutions coming in, a lot of services are coming in this area, a lot of technology. There's a regulatory reg tech that people talk about, regulatory compliance technology specific to regulation. So all that could help you solve. But this is not an easy problem to solve. This will be a very difficult problem coming future to solve, especially cloud coming in, IoT coming in. It will become very difficult in coming future, basically. Anything from that side of, please?
Hi, good morning. This is Mohit. You touched upon this RBI regulation on outsourcing. I went through that. They have briefly mentioned about cloud adoption. But what I have seen personally, I hail from a fintech company, and we handle a lot of BFSI customers, both from banking as well as insurance. Why there is a hitch or the banking, especially the PSU sector, shying away from adopting cloud, though even regulator is kind of laying down the regulation, and where do you see it going in coming future? Is there any COE being created around it by organizations like DSCI or RBI, bringing these public sector banks or giving them comfort that how they should be adopting it? So what's this roadmap and anything we are working around that? Thank you.
Yeah, so I think we have JPM also in the room. He can also add in this. I am seeing RBI taking quite a progressive approach in terms of cloud. I was part of one of the working committee group which was set up for cloud adoption to the banking industry, basically. So definitely, and some of the RBI ecosystem, ecosystem is also talking about even core moving to cloud. So that appellant's call is definitely going forward. But while doing that, a regulator has lot of those obligations, right? The rights of the customer, the stability of the financial industry, and in some crisis situation, how these things will go, basically. So their concerns are legitimate, basically, right? In one of the cloud security governance, we talk about if regulator is talking about specific things, so what do you mean by that, basically, right? And why they come with that particular requirement and that particular concern from the regulation perspective. Those who are taking this cloud service, they also see that things are going out of their hand, basically, right? And would you get same level of security or improved level of security when it is going on a cloud? So there are still some concern areas, basically, right? And there are some concerns which are very significant concerns, which is like a single point of failure if it goes to cloud, because some disruption that we have seen in recent past in big cloud service provider as well. So there are some legitimate concerns which inhibits somebody to go to cloud, especially public sector organizations are very concerned about the data that is going on out of their boundaries, basically, right? And because it's not only the intrinsic concerns and requirement and issues, right? There are a lot of those extrinsic requirement, compliance requirement, which talks about your obligations for security, right? So the equation is quite complex in that sense, and that's why somebody who's taking those decisions would be worried about going for cloud, basically. We have to find a better way of managing those concerns and issues and problems, basically. So maybe technically, maybe some of the structure framework that needs to be done. But now cloud security governance is also improving quite significantly in terms of practices, in terms of technology, in terms of things which are being provided by CSP. There are a lot of layer of managed cloud security providers which are coming in the picture. And an organization who are buying the security is also now maturing to work with cloud. So going forward, we see a lot of those transition coming on the cloud, basically. You want to add something in this? There's a mic there.
Yeah, I think more or less you summed it up, but based on my own experience, what I observed, at least in the public sector bank, though I don't want to be generalizing it, sometimes it's a early mover advantage. So every bank is looking at who is the first person who can move so that I can follow you. Yeah. That could be one path. Second, what I observed is comparing to private sector, public sector, the talent availability is very vital. Yeah. So that's very, very vital, because public sector, at least there are people, CISO team office, there are enough amount of talent available, they're able to participate, discuss, gather inputs, and take an informed decisions. So in my own personal opinion, based on my experience working in my previous role, I think the vendor ecosystem, the cloud service provider ecosystem, has to collaborate much more closely, align with the requirements, understand the PSB's culture, DNA, support them in 1 or 2 pilot use cases, give them the required confidence. After that, it's a matter of time for people to take over.
Yeah.
That's what my summary would be.
And government has been trying to do this. Megaraj policy of Government of India try to address exactly the thing. So how do government organizations, public sector units can adopt the cloud? And the Megaraj policy is quite good intervention that Ministry of Data and IT has brought in terms of helping the PSUs and government organizations to adopt cloud basically, right? And there are a lot of cloud service providers they notified as well, and that is being leveraged basically. But what JPM had talked about is, I have seen, because a lot of our members are in public sector organization as well. So problem is somebody has to be managing it well actually, right? And that talent of management of this is definitely, that is the area that needs significant work, and if that improves, things would probably change. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Any other 1 or 2 points? Yeah, please.
Consolidation practices. Is there, are you looking at consolidation of talent across, the organizations? Because you spoke about shortage of the talent in private or PSUs, but we do need CISOs across every organization. We do need security officers, security managers. So is there going to be a consortium of people who can serve as consultants to, various entities that we have? Are you looking into that, sir?
Yeah, so this is a very, that's what this discussion is very important. So if you look at some of the private sector organization, security entire as a function is consolidated with some function like a CISO, right? Or privacy is now getting consolidation in terms of the CPO function basically. But many organizations had been still struggling with that basically, right? So for example, because of RBI, most of the banks have CISO function now, and that has come as a regulatory requirement basically. You need to have CISO function, and it's not also it's also not like your organization basically. RBI also organizes CISOs meet together and they discuss and they try to learn from each other, and that also helps them to improve the security individually and at a sector level as well. So there is sector level consolidation of security also comes with a regulatory intervention and this kind of policy enablement basically. At central level, we had found this issue with respect to the government and public sector organization. Many government organizations didn't have consolidated security function. Some IT guy will do the security basically. And there are some sectors like we see that issue in small and medium sized organization as well. So there is not, sometimes they may not even have IT person basically. So the government has also come up with a requirement. So there was NISPG policy. So this is a National Information Security Guidelines of a Ministry of External Home Affairs basically. So we work with MHA to develop that particular NISPG. Because of that policy now, almost every government department has a CISO function now. And now every ministry has CISO function. So for example, Minister of Power has CISO function, right? Even National Cybersecurity Coordinator function has a CISO function basically, right? So these requirements are now coming, and that is definitely helping them to really organize security better and probably consolidate the work that they do in security. PSUs are also learning the way. Means until now I used to see assistant manager, assistant general manager, deputy general manager, a deputy manager kind of people who would be being CISO. But now I'm seeing CISO as an executive director role basically. So that changes we have seen in last 5-6 years of time, where some of the larger PSUs that you look at, the CISO is ED, executive director level basically. And they are, in some cases, they have been brought to the level of a CIO as well. For example, in ONGC, CIO is a ED and CISO is also ED basically. So that changes are also significantly had come in last 5-6 years of time basically, and same thing is now happening for privacy as well. But what is the key concern is the mid-size organization basically. Still trying to look at cooperative bank, the commercial banks, there, how do you consolidate organized security better basically. So, so things are definitely moving in that direction, and more needs to be done, but at least we are seeing the things are getting into direction basically. Yeah, so we have Palo Alto team, we have little time available, 30 minutes only, but what we want to really do in these 30 minutes is the security operations that we conventionally know, how they are evolving and challenges we have. So for example, one of the important challenges which I am going to a lot of organization, they say the entire investment and the kind of outcome that you draw out of investment that you are making for security operation, especially if you have a mechanism of a one seam SOAR kind of a solution, but the enforcement and the identification. So what kind of architectural engineering changes which are happening basically to take the security operations to a level where we probably leverage from this technology evaluation happening in last 2-3 years of time, especially XDR is one of the important thing. Probably we'll get across that through the presentation here. Look this as a more engineering and architectural evaluation happen in this area, and we'll dwell on those part basically. So the presentation also made in the way that we get to across the engineering and architectural discussion in this particular things. So you are ready?
Thanks, Vinayak. So slightly apologies for the slight delay. And actually, I was going through the DSCI concept where we are talking about consolidation of security, and then there was a question whether you go for consolidation and what will happen for the best of breed. So we'll talk you through that and what we are doing as Palo Alto Networks as a vendor, how we see as consolidation, because the challenges that you are facing is something that we as a vendor also facing, because we have a 10,000 plus employee community there, and our organization is going through all the challenges that as an organization that you all are going through, we are also going through that, and our products, we are our own guinea pig. So today what we are going to talk about is a concept called XDR, and this concept is actually introduced by our Palo Alto Network itself. So our founder Nirusuk, he's the one actually defined this term XDR. So everyone was in the space of EDR. So you might have already you might already have EDRs in your organization. So this term XDR is actually defined by Palo Alto Networks. We said, okay, EDR is not the next step. We went one more step ahead and we introduced XDR. So let me walk you through if you look at an IT organization today, there might be different tools. So EDR is one aspect that has been there for some time, and okay. So I'll just play a small video. I think you might have seen this recently. So you have all these tools. You have EDR, you have SIEM, then you have network detection and response, all of these, and then the security operation, the InfoSec team is there. And what happens is, once the attackers are inside the network, you are not able to detect it. There's a reason for that, and there's a reason that this approach has not worked, and that now everyone is trying to move into that EDR space. So what are these challenges that actually has not resolved these things? So if you look at what's happening around here, we are seeing increase in attacks and alerts. So that means when you have SIEM, you are getting loads of alerts that you are not able to respond, and you are not able to make it meaningful alerts. So your analyst that you have is spending time on doing the same thing over and over again, trying to resolve these alerts. And then whatever your investments, so you are investing a lot on all of these tools. SIEM is not a cheap tool. Nothing is cheap. So you are investing a lot of investments into the security, but you are not getting the adequate return on that investment. And also then regarding the business outcomes, where you want to make sure that your security teams is doing the response and you are able to respond in adequate time, because you don't want an incident to happen and then the security team to discover it after 3 days. So you want it to happen immediately, you want it to happen as soon as possible. So I have my colleague Sham.
Thanks. So typically what happens is that you have the traditional approach is that you have an EDR, you have an SIEM, or let's say you have multiple log sources. So these log sources are coming in an SIEM, and SIEM is typically nothing but, I would say, a Google search. You go put entry, it gets like a 10,000 results. For an analyst or administrator, it is a major, I would say, like he spends his most of the time to do only query to get results. Now what an XDR comes is that the XDR typically solves this issue, means how the auto incident triage happens across, means multiple alerts, it automatically, you will be saying, hey, I can understand that the SIM can also do it across, but from the raw data, because SIM typically how it works is that it actually takes the alert data from the endpoint. So you might be agreeing with me that any malware need to be executed, it need to be executed in the local machine. Now the raw data is from where the XDR collects the telemetry data and it automatically builds the relationship. For example, you wanted to know one particular network communication which has been gone to the outbound company. No, for example, you just go to SIM or any EDR tool or let's say other network traffic detection or firewall, put the entry, you will get a 10,000 results. Now, if you want to know, that's like you will see source and destination, you will be able to see. Now, you want to know which particular rewrite, file rewrite activity happened, which particular registries was modified, all those information. Getting those information in today's scenario, the threat analyst or I would say the administrator need to look in like an Excel sheet one by one he has to go through. Now if this particular thing, it will typically takes around 40 to 1 hour timestamp to get it addressed. What an XDR tool does is that it actually auto correlate, I would say auto triage the entire scenario into one, so that what are the parent-child process associated with this network connection, it automatically gives you. So the 40 minutes to 1 hour, it is reduced to 5 minutes. That's the advantage of that. So what an XDR is doing is that it is actually bringing the gap between the SIM tool and the EDR with an incident triaging as well as an behavior analytics over there.
Can you go to the previous slide? Previous. So this requirement part, like deep analysis of quality enriched data. So this enrichment happens internally or also external enrichment?
Both. So so typically you have the XDR agent sitting on the end machine, collects the metadata, and any third-party log resources can be ingested towards it.
Yeah. So the key thing to manage the an uncertain event is you have internal intelligence available, but at the same time you have external intelligence. So that's the enrichment that comes to you, and then you should bring out that together to do the deep analysis basically. So that is definitely one of the key thing actually. And then this the built-in analytics basically. So it happens somewhere at the edge level, or it happens at a...
It's a completely cloud delivered service. So we have big data analytics which has been running across. So all the log resources which has been coming in across, it actually enriches the metadata. So enrichment happens on a data lake. So multiple log sources accumulate in one single data lake and the enrich. So you have peer profiling, you have user-based time profiling, behavior analytics. All those analytics will be running. The more data, enrichment data, the more analytics or the baselining happens across.
And one of the important thing is this happens for only one organization, or all the data that you get is also data coming from all other. You must have deployment many of the organization, and you get data, and from that data you also enrich. There's a cross learning as well happen between different organizations as well.
Correct. So that's basically most of the vendors calls it the global analytics. Yes, that is. So that pretty much works in a supply chain of attack actually. So SolarWinds was one of the attack, right? Yeah. So SolarWinds will say, hey, there was a specific EXE execution happened, but what are the parent-child process which is associated with that SolarWinds? No one was aware of, right? So if that similar kind of execution is happening in the endpoint, the global analytics pretty much help you to prevent in supply chain attack actually.
Yeah, and then this is a typical concept of a platform-based security where you leverage whatever you consume here, you leverage from the capability that are being made available to you as a very standardized global capability. You leverage from that, but while you are leveraging, you also throw the intelligence back to the platform, and others learn from the experience that you have basically. So you leverage and you contribute back as well. So others being on the platform helps you, and you being on the platform helps others as well, because it's a cross learning, cross understanding, and that creates a quite a good kind of enrichment. And because of that enrichment, if something is happening with in some organization at some other place, there's a possibility for you to know that this could happen to you as well actually. And this global way of managing, platform way of managing, could probably help you doing that well actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are you keeping it on cloud and connecting to the local machine, or in the local also you can
Uh,
all the intelligence can be present?
as it's a SaaS-based approach. So if it is like a air gap environment, yes, we do support that deployment as well. So the local. So there will be one proxy, we call it as a VM broker, that will be deployed on the end user infrastructure. So all data will be connected to the syncing with back. Yes, that's correct. So
especially like when you talk about analytics need a lot of compute power. So we can't get that compute power from the endpoint itself. So that's why we need a cloud-based approach where we can do deep learning, and we have more resources in the cloud where we can do it quickly and get to the point, because we need to do the prevention in real time. So that's why we need the cloud-based solution.
No, the complete, it will be so the local guy will be acting as a data collector and just forwarding it across. The reason, because so any, let's say in a firewall, in a day firewall, the traffic depends upon the number of users. It will be more than 2 GB or 3 GB raw data itself. So this entire data, if you're going across in a month, if you calculate, it is more than TB sizes. Yeah. So if you're putting in a hard disk, or I would say hard disk based or a storage based device in the on-prem, the data will be going to overwrite, right? So any analytics solution, that should be a baseline should be there, like a 15 days, 10 days. So now a good analytics solution, that based upon that baseline, it should automatically understand, hey, this is something new and this is something abnormal happening across. So the storage component is pretty much important when you come. So in a cloud delivered services, the auto scaling happens. Even if you are consuming petabytes or terabytes of data, it doesn't matter, because the elasticity is there. That's the reason most of the vendors are adopting SaaS-based approach, because of the elasticity part.
I think finding problem is looking at historical data and also checking with the current stream of data basically. And you will able to understand current stream well if you have historical data with you basically.
So one more adding to what's that? So basically every compliance of an organization says that there should be a 60 days or I would say 180 days of raw data should be there. Now the question is that, hey, that raw data will it be useful? Yes, it will be useful when a scenario of attack, because if the similar IOC or similar attack is present in past 6 months, you wanted to see, just one click of button, the result is for you. And what other read-write activity happens? So now classic example, I would say a ransomware attack, right? Now ransomware attack typically will be most of the silent one, and whenever it communicates to the CNC, it activates. Now you want to know that particular hash value or that particular file name exists in your environment for past 6 months, is there or not, or a particular communication going from the end, you want to search. This 6-month raw data really helps you across.
But if you are storing that 6 months data in your local premises without connecting to the cloud, whether your software which is loaded in the local, whether it can do this, that is my question. Does it have to connect?
The question is on-prem, how much that can be happen on?
Only to update the thread feed, or for its working itself, it needs to connect to the cloud.
So sir, the entire storage, we are not keeping anything on-prem actually. So it is just for air gap, it's everything on the cloud itself. So that on-prem machine, for air gap machine, it acts as a sysl or collector, I would say, and it then it sends the photo.
Yeah.
Most of the people are offering such
Yeah. But if you see,
looking for somebody who they can come up with an on-prem and only connect for the thread feed update or something like that.
On-prem, the challenge.
Because I already explained, we are in a government.
Yeah. So many PSUs government would have this kind of challenge, right?
so sir, when you see, we have come across similar requirement, but according to the government mandate, the data localization is one of the major component, right? So our cloud, which is completely on data localization, when you are spinning up a tenant, you yourself are spinning it across. So we never spin a tenant and give to you. So you go and you activate yourself.
And we have data like in India.
In India itself, correct. So we are hosted in GCP.
So most of the companies are now putting the data center in India, and that local data center is being leveraged by some of those security companies as well. So can you go, because we have 10 minutes
Yeah,
left.
sorry.
Yeah.
So So as a holistic, this will be the entire approach. One will be that, so when we talk about analytics, this will endpoint identity. Identity is basically your AD or local LDAP, and any data source, it can be firewall network, means it does the your network, it's like can collect your cloud resources, or it can be. So all the data we are stitching it across in a single platform where you will getting digital forensics, endpoint EDR, CDR, NTA, along plus UEBA, along with one single platform. And for entire automation, we have the SOAR. So SOAR typically, what are your daily works, which need to be identified, and that daily works we can automate, so that your entire L1 team can be automated to L2. And last but not the least, the attack surface management, it typically tells you that what all your internet resources is been exposed, which can be. So you have a, let's say like a proactive approach that, hey, I know that what all my resources which is been exposed, so that a hacker can look in across, and if this internet, for a simple example is that a particular server, a port 22 or a, I would say RDP session is open, that typically is not allowed. Now how you can get a visibility, that's what the attack surface management talks about. So this is a complete holistic approach, so that your complete SOC, we can completely automate it. So we call it as autonomous SOC actually.
So we are saying that until now SOAR would directly talk to EDR, right? It will talk to identity solution, and the key part of the SOAR is sending the enforcement action, and enforcement is taken there, right?
Correct.
So now you are saying that enforcement action would also be routing through XDR.
XDR, correct. So basically isolating your machine, you wanted a specific network need to be communicated, all those can be automated across. Now you, for example, one of your emails, let's say one example, your email account got compromised or one user got compromised. You identifying that whether that's a valid, true positive or false positive itself takes a 1 hour time, right? 1-2 hours time. So this can be automated. Basically, this particular IOC is a malicious or non-malicious. It can query across multiple threat feeds like your virus total or any malware.run, some like multiple integration. Once it is validated, it can automatically, hey, this is a true positive, and it can be, that particular user account can be disabled, or that particular user machine can be isolated from. So the entire flow can be automated with the manager's approval. So your entire 1, 2, 3 hours time frame can be reduced to 5 minutes.
So
that's how.
It's not only the small, like the email and scenarios where if you want to disable an user, that sort of use cases also we can address to SOAR platform, where you say some user, we suspect that some user's credential got compromised, and you want to disable that user from the AD. That also we can automate through the SOAR, where with the input we can do that, or without input we can do that. So
yes, sir.
Yeah. Is it a network based or a agent based? That's first question. Second question is, suppose there is an incident happened. Now, can the tool automatically identify what all other machines are having similar issues but are not targeted, but they can be actually be fixed?
Yeah, it gives you the information. How? Because most of the attacks, something does try to do a lateral movement, or let's say a DJ trying to communicate across. So based upon that, or the analytics typically tells you that these are the machine is trying to do a failed DNS connection, or this is something anomaly activity, and the entire anomaly activity it's been triaged in a single incident, so that you don't need to work on every alert. It's a incident triage. So one single incident talks or groups every alerts into one, so that you have a complete end-to-end visibility.
But the agent is
network, because network that's what we call network traffic analytics. So it takes
no. So what the question is, the enforced, so it's an agent that is sitting on every machine.
The agent is sitting on the end machine, and the network traffic, like so your switch net flow logs and your syslog, whichever firewall, can be syslog or Ceph, can be ingested, and a network traffic analytics has been done. So both will stitch together.
The important comes with the analytics piece, and also we have something called log stitching. So this is also important part, where one example you said, okay, the malware executed on multiple machines, we combine it into a single incident. We don't want to have it as separate incidents, we combine it to single incident, give you picture. And then let's say that particular malware is making a C2 communication, and that is detected by the firewall. So if you take the firewall alert as an isolate incident, you will not see, you will not know which process that initiated that, right? So for that, you need the stitching and the correlation part. So that's where the power of a tool like this comes in, because we show you the complete chain of events that happened, and okay, from this particular process, there was an event executed, and whether the firewall prevented that or not. So we correlate all of that, and that's where you get the holistic view, and that makes life easy to troubleshoot and understand, okay, this is what happened, this is where enforcement point, this took place, and everything.
And then if it is agent based, then obviously many companies don't like installing agents on the servers because it takes the load. So have you taken that into consideration?
Yeah. So basically, these are all lightweight agents, and when we talk across this next slide.
Sure. Yeah.
Next one more slide. So when we talk about the agent, why the agent takes a lot of metadata. So it can be process, it can be file, it can be all security related incident, all registry activities, read write. So entire telemetry which is happening on the endpoint, it takes and it automatically switches from it. Let it be not even a raw data, I mean it's a incident. It is a pure raw data. The machine has the capability to stitch it across. So that enrichment. Now the same example which you gave, we can easily add with your AD logs as well. So AD logs you can also say this user how much service tried to connect across in past 30 days. The entire visibility is stitched into one single incident. Yes.
So would it now replace some of the agents currently working, because this ecosystem would be also replacing, or it will be on top of it basically?
It can coexist with multiple. Now going further, it has the capability to act as a standalone AV, EDR, everything. Now you have already invested, we understand there is ROI, so it can act as only a collection or telemetry collection data. So it is a multi-method, we can deploy it across according to your requirement.
Can we customize, for example, in Windows Defender takes some data and then your tool is using some data. Maybe it's a false positive. Can we customize it so that it doesn't show such output?
Yes, you can customize. So that's a exclusion you can define. So that's always a concept of true positive and false positive. You can create your own exclusion rules according to it. It is available. Just click on next, please. One more.
So another 3-4 minutes we have.
Yeah. I just want to just click it. So this was we were talking across. Click next. So these are the multiple log resources when it collects all the log. Let it be firewall, let it be cloud or endpoint. So typically in the firewall you'll be saying, sorry, the agent you'll be saying the set of processes running in the firewall is basically source, destination and all. And now on the top of that you will be having the AD logs coming across, and this all will be stitched together. Not only we are doing stitching, the analytics, the UBA analytics been running. So you will be getting profile and more. It will be user-based analytics. You have a network-based analytics going. You have a UEBA going across and a behavior. So all this analytics will start kicking in across. If there is any anomaly activity coming across, it highlights across for your administrator to work across. Now when the automation comes there, if this is the first thing is that to validate whether it's a true positive or false positive. Once it has been validated true positive, based upon the matching of multiple external threat intelligence. It can be, if you have subscribed to threat intelligence, that can also be part of it. It's just an API integration. So once that has been validated, the user or the number of devices can be completely isolated, or let's say the user can be disabled. So your this entire management lifecycle is like 5 hours. We can just cut short to like 10 minutes or 15 minutes. Now the question you will be asking that, hey, can I put a manager approval? Because after the approval only need to be done. That is also possible.
And it's analytics inbuilt, or we have to be connected with Power BI or functional?
No, it is inbuilt. You don't need. The reason why I believe is that now let's say any correlation rule which is working on an SIM, it's a static correlation rule. If that particular matches across, then the trigger happens, right? So that you creating 10 or 5,000 correlation rules, so it doesn't make sense. So what we are doing, we are just completely moving away and bringing it completely automated. And now still, if you want to write correlation rules, yes, it is possible.
So in terms of analytics, one is we give you like whatever we understand from the global level, and we have analytics tools, and also we consider your environment as well, because each environment will be different, and based on that, that's where the we call it user and entity behavior analytics. So that also comes into play, where we create analytics based on your environment specifically. So that also something to consider. Yeah.
Just click next. This is what we will discuss across. Yeah. Next. So basically, this is one of your failed DNS alerts. So you can see that it automatically groups the incident. What are the number of endpoints, where you can easily drill down. Now if you want to have visualization, this is purely looks like an Excel. Now if you just click on next, so you can completely visualize it across who is the entity, which is, and there you can also that this is a behavior happened last 15 days, and this is a change as well. So likewise, the tool gives an end-to-end visibility for you. So it will be pretty much easy for you to understand whether it's really a false positive or not. So one, the domain generating algorithm is one more, which tries to communicate 10 to 15 devices, right? So that also we can understand and get it. Just click next. So if any rare child process is executing, we can identify it across. Then if you are like a port scan is happening, basically that's one of the major concerns happening in the network layer, right? Yes, we can identify and tell you across like that.
Yeah,
we are-
I think I know we had a very short time, but probably with this, I think we will conclude this discussion. The idea was to delve into this much detail. Almost we devised almost 75 to 80 minutes for this discussion. But still, I think we could able to get at least some sense of what is architecturally happening with respect to XDR basically, and how the things are moving from the key part of security management is a policy definition point and policy enforcement point, right? Both had problem with the existing ecosystem, because you may identify something, but enforcing is a big challenge basically, right? And many components are now probably getting integrated and consolidated as a part of the XDR, and we will develop on XDR during the day as well, why that is becoming very important consolidation story from technology perspective and operations perspective as well. So thank you, Palo Alto team, for setting up this particular master class. Thank you for your support on this one. So we all will be moving to, yeah, please announce that.
Yes.